At any time, we can pretend that we can pause while we look back, while we look forward. But no matter how much we think we have the power to pause, in fact, it is only a figure of speech. In reality, life has no pause. It flows on. There's no going back to do it all over again. And there's no preview of the future. It is all happening, until, like that grandfather's clock, it stops. So long as it is ticking along, we have the capacity to make our comments and our criticisms, our predictions and our prognosis, our explanations and our evaluations. And then out of the page jumps the words of Ben Okri's poem, that Nigerian poet, when he says, we could use the new era to clean our eyes, to see the world differently, to see ourselves more clearly. And he went on, we are best defined, he said, by the mystery that we are still here and can still rise upwards, still create better civilizations. But although most of us will not see ourselves as having a major role in creating better civilizations, we're all, in our different ways, committed to finding some enjoyment in our life, some recovery for our life, some broadening for our life, even some depth in our everyday experience. And we can all find that depth in different ways, in our different ways we live our life. Some do it in literature, some do it in philosophy, some do it in sport. They have their particular way of finding some depth to their everyday experience. But others will say, but what's it matter? You live, and with a little bit of luck, some good things will happen. Things will flow on. And there it is, until at last you start to do your downhill run. Dr. Atul Gawande, I've quoted him before, but he has a new book called Being Mortal. And he draws out the pathways of our mortality. How some give up and die a slow death while they're still alive. And others discover their living vitality even as they're dying. But for all that, probably nobody would like to be told on the last day of their life that they lived a useless, shallow existence, superficial, scatty, selfish. No one wants to find themselves reciting T.S. Eliot's poem of J. Alfred Prufrock. And would it have been worth it after all, he said? After the cups, the marmalade and the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile? And on it goes. I grow old. I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. But Ben Okri comes back again and he says, we are greater than our despair. The negative aspects of humanity are not the most real and authentic. And so once again we visit the parable of the sower. With the seed, the soil, the sower, and the reaper in the future. The magic of growth from seed to flower to harvest. The meaning that it gives to life, to work, dealing with the challenges, carrying the hope, the success, and hopefully the celebration. To celebrate those things that deepen our everyday experience. I've been looking again at a large volume I have of the paintings of Manet. Two people sitting at a window at Aragon, staring out the window. Four people having lunch on the grass in the forest. A boy blowing a bubble. A lady with a parrot. The mesmerizing eyes of Olympia. One of the great features of his paintings are the eyes. The eyes that speak of emptiness or of reflective depth. The paintings, one by one and all together, talk of someone who was once just a subject of the painting. But again and again, the painting itself takes us beyond the subject, to the depth of the thought, to the depth of the emotion, to the depth of behavior, to the depth of the whole human context. And the psalmist, Psalm 103 that I read, said, somewhere deep within me, I want to lift up my voice to celebrate what God has given me in this life. So on Boxing Day, I drove to my park, not far from my place, for my customary walk. The park is usually empty, such a magnificent park surrounded by opulent houses on all four sides, but the park empty. But the other day, it wasn't quite empty. A couple walked by. Am I allowed to say they looked to me like they were middle-aged, man and wife, quarrelling. What were they quarrelling about? That was not important. It probably didn't matter that much. What was important was the erosion of the relationship. The shaking molar tooth of their belief that the person they were talking to would be the same person, regardless of whether they cared for the tooth of their belief or not. What was important was whether there was any fantasy of the future for them. For without that fantasy, all the seed planting in the parable is pointless. Well, far across the oval of the park, there was a woman throwing a ball to her dog. The dog was clearly overjoyed by the repetition of back and forth. And there it was, all so superficial, until I noted how the dog responded to the freedom of this open space, its ready acceptance of orderly behavior, its experience of belonging to someone, its focused life, all giving depth to an otherwise superficial event of the owner and her dog. And there was a third party, just around the corner, the bushes, around the corner from me, a father with a kite. Oh yes, and there was a 4-year-old boy tagging along. But the father and the kite took my attention. There he was learning the unpredictability of the wind. There I was seeing the parents' excitement of persistence in the face of failure and success. Realizing that life could be knowing what it really was. To have a good time with a child watching on. So all those people in the park, those 3 groups of people. Oh, there was a 4th, of course, myself. Sitting in the sunshine, beautiful sunshine, watching, wondering, stimulated by what I saw and by the memories they evoked, soaking in the ambience of this beautiful park, and then knowing my way back to my car. Recognizing that in the various superficial circumstances of our lives, sometimes we can pause, or apparently seem to pause, and see that there's something deeper could be happening here, giving a different meaning to life, a different character to our life. So I'm going to speak for a little while about 5 things that can deepen our experience. And the parable that I read today, the parable of the sower, spoke of selecting the place to put the seed, having a space to grow, having soil deep enough to take hold, take root, making sure that the soil had nutrients, the strength of the nutrients in the soil, and of course the surrounding context, the surrounding environment. And if I were to put all that into a different language, I go back to Dr. Gawanda's book, where he told the story of a man, Leon Sanders, 88 years of age, going on 90. He and his daughter were confronting the question, the difficult decision of what was now going to happen to him in his future. They were facing the feared emptiness of a nursing home. But then they heard of one nursing home where one young doctor, just 31 years of age, had persuaded the nursing home to participate in an experiment. They would introduce dogs and cats and parrots into the nursing home. And the reaction of the residents, say nothing of the people who ran the place, but the reaction of the residents was astonishing. He said it gave them a new awareness of life around them. Instead of just sitting there, as many of them had been doing day by day, it gave them a task to care for the animal or the bird, to watch it, to enjoy its activity, its vitality. It gave them a reason to live. Over a period of time, he said, the death rate dropped. And the doctor said, I believe that the difference in death rates can be traced to the fundamental human need of having a reason to live. We are like a seed, can be like a seed in a jar, just there. But then we can discover, given the chance, a reason to live. So that's my number 1. Number 2, I'm going to go back to the paintings of Manet, because in those different paintings, as I turn the pages, beneath the surface of each painting, you could imagine the emotion. Beneath the emotion, there was a story. Beneath the story, there was the person. And the mix of the interpersonal, person with person, and the complexities of their stories. And through them all, there was the dream, the fantasy, the painting. Of course, you can shrug your shoulders and walk on. Or you can listen for a moment. Pretend to pause and listen to the unfolding depths that could be contained in the stories of each of those figures in the painting. In fact, it was the startling discoveries of Sigmund Freud that we're able to see that behind the surface of human behavior, there was an unconscious aspect that gave greater understanding to the behavior, gave us greater appreciation of the motivation in human behavior, gave us a greater awareness of the potential of the human being. So there is the second level of depth of every day, is to be aware of the unfolding potential, the ongoing search for the parameters of growth through the story, behind the story, under the story. Growth. And the third thing, we know that many live out their life and fall short of their potential. Don't make contact with their strengths. So I'd like to make this the third part, making contact with our untapped strengths. In this edition, I've mentioned this before, in this recent edition of New Scientist, there is an article on the user's guide to the human mind, how you can tap its strength and work around its weaknesses. And it goes through 7 such strengths of the human mind. Of course, we all too often close it off and think of so many other things to occupy us, and we cease exploring our hidden, undiscovered strengths. In fact, it mentions in this article, it mentions that J.K. Rowling was not thumping her brain to get the story of Harry Potter to come into being. The idea, she said, popped into her head when she was stuck in a very delayed train. And the article in New Scientist said, we've all had similar, although probably less lucrative, aha moments, where a flash of inspiration comes along out of the blue and we discover some strength, some hidden strength that we hadn't tapped into before. So the fourth one, you heard it in the parable and you heard it in the poem about the bracken that covered the well, about the brambles that prevented the seed from growing. So we need to clear away the bracken of our mind and allow a larger view to come before us. I was given a Christmas present of Don Watson's 400-page book called The Bush. Very appropriately, travels into the heart of Australia. A great story, really, from beginning to end. A story that keeps bringing good things out of bad. In one place, I read of the loss, the destruction, the death of the blue-winged parrots up at Sea Lake in northern Victoria. These magnificent birds, all gone. But despite that fact, he speaks of the gigantic mirror of the lake, with every star in the firmament reflected in it every night. He said the 100 million stars of the Milky Way were the smoke to the ancestors of the Aboriginal tribes. So although we lose things, although things get taken away from us, we can discover something else is sitting there waiting for us to see and opening us to this larger view that we hadn't seen before. And the fifth thing for our deeper experience in everyday life is the tapestry. I mentioned it already today. It speaks of memories of people and places. It speaks of the tyranny of our inner emptiness occurring again and again. It speaks of our short-term gratifications, our loneliness, our ongoing, uncertain, ambiguous searchings. But then at last it gives the goal of our searching. Evasive though it may be, it is to be enhanced by an exuberant vitality, opening us to the celebration of light and life. 5 things, therefore. 5 things that could deepen, bring some depth, some additional depth to our daily experience, making sure we have a reason to live. Searching, keep on searching for your growth. Tapping our hidden underlying strengths. Rising above the bracken, the brambles, to see the larger view. and remembering the energy of vitality. Oh yes, the parable said the seed that fell in good soil grew and bore fruit, and the yield was 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. That's vitality. Would you please stand? And so I give you the blessing for this Sunday. You know it well. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.